You're live.
We're live. What's up, Prescott Times? We're doing a real estate takeover right now to bring you the latest market information for the Quad Cities area and then also bring you some real estate news. So I'm Brent Wofford. If you don't know me, I'm Prescott's local rad realtor. And this is Travis Smart, the smartest lender I know.
I'm Travis of the Smart Choice Lending Team over at Guild Mortgage. Very excited to be here this morning.
So cool. Well, before we get into it, let's roll that intro.
Dang,
All right,
buddy.
what's up, Stan?
Hey, how you guys doing today? I'm here for the ride of a lifetime. I want to see exactly what is going on in the market, but I am not the expert, but you guys are. So let's go ahead and get that intro going.
Cool. Well, thanks for having us, Stan. First of all, and foremost, today we're going to talk about, like I said, real estate stats for the Quad Cities area, dive into a couple more real estate stats for Prescott. But before we do that, let's get into real estate news and kind of get an idea of what's going on in real estate as a whole. So that's why Travis is here today, because Travis is a lender. I'm a realtor. He handles the finance side of things. I handle the selling, the buying, all that stuff that comes with opening doors and, delivering keys.
Hey, that's the good cop. This is the bad cop, and that's just how it goes.
So let's dive into some real estate news, man. I mean, you're more in tune with the markets than I am. I'm more in tune with the inventory side, but you've got the market side. So what can you tell us?
So obviously there's a lot of different things that the news is saying. First, I wanted to kind of start with just a little bit of education. So essentially the definition of inflation, which is a big topic, is too many dollars chasing too few of goods, right? So during COVID, what was happening? They were getting stimulus checks, pumping a lot of money into the economy, but there was also supply chain issues, right? Mm-hmm. So what did that do? It drove prices of different things up, right?
Well, yeah, they wouldn't let it. They were locking us down and scaring people, and sellers didn't want people in their house because they didn't want to get COVID. So our supply just greatly diminished, but there was still demand out there by buyers.
Of course, yeah, and they were also stimulating the economy by purchasing mortgage-backed securities, artificially lowering interest rates to like the 2s and 3%, right? Well, they did a little bit too much, right? They did a little bit too much. So
Fed got a little aggressive.
Dude, a little bit excited, a little bit, and then by the time that they realized it was a little bit too late. So what did they start doing?
They started raising rates.
They started raising the Fed funds rate. Well, I also wanted to kind of do a little bit of education on that. So the Fed funds rate is banks' one-day interest rate to loan each other money. It's to drive inflation down because rates are higher, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of misconceptions about mortgage interest rates following that. Well, mortgage interest rates follow inflation. What are they doing by raising the Fed funds rate, trying to drive inflation down? So inversely, actually what they're doing is helping mortgage interest rates. It's hurting the personal loans, the credit cards, revolving credit, and auto loans.
Yeah.
But the goal is to drive inflation down.
So is that why we saw interest rates for homes spike so much quicker than what the Fed was raising their funds rate at?
That's exactly right, because inflation had gone a little bit out of control. I mean, they kind of called it transitory, and then that was a very, very long transit, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that are going on, a lot of misconceptions. And something that I don't know about you, but I hear a lot of clients say is, oh, we're going to wait for the market to crash, or we're going to wait for rates to go down. Well, here we are. And you can kind of dive a little bit into what you've been seeing even today with a client you were telling me about as far as multiple demand and the demand still being high due to inventory.
Oh, yeah. So inventory in the Quad Cities area is low. I'll get into that in the stats section here after we talk about news. But yeah, just while you're bringing that up, man, I've got a client right now who we're looking for homes, and there are some homes available. They don't have dozens of homes to choose from. Like we used to have the luxury of that in, 2016, 2017, 2018. It was a very balanced market. So there was like, if you're buying a house, it's like, oh, here's a dozen to choose from. Which ones fit your needs the best, right? So right now it's not that case. I mean, the buyers I'm working with currently have probably about 4 to 5 options that they're looking at. They found one that they really like. Turns out there's already 2 offers on the table on it. We've got to get our offer in today if we're going to have a shot at it. And what that means when there's multiple offers is that we no longer have the leverage on the buyer's side to ask for closing costs, to ask for a home warranty, to ask for contingencies, which means you have to sell your house before you can buy a new house, right? Because there's gonna be another buyer out there that's not asking for these things, that doesn't have a contingency, and the seller's gonna take their offer because it's an easier deal. Yeah. Right. So I've got a buyer that we're having to navigate that process today to figure out, okay, are we going to come in at list price? Or are we going to come in at over list price? You know, are we going to do an escalation clause? Are we going to throw in some other things that are seller incentives into a deal that can make a deal smoother? I don't know. We're navigating that process and hopefully trying to get the buyer the house.
And I think that another thing to kind of think about is we're in this kind of state of market right now. So there's a lot of different things that are happening that appear to be making inflation go down. One thing being more restrictive lending policies when it comes to credit cards, auto loans, personal loans. So again, driving less dollars, and the supply chain issues are no longer there, driving inflation down. So what's going to happen, in your opinion, once we see interest rates really start going down, the news start changing their tone, and all the folks that have been sitting on the fence kind of waiting for the rates to go down, all of them enter the market at the same time. But also you have people who want to sell their house, but it's hard for them to leave a 2 to 3% interest rate for as high as interest rates were in the 7s, which, you know, what are we going to see? What do you think?
Well, we've got for one, on one side of it, we do have a lot of sellers right now that are sitting on the bench. They're not throwing the house on market. They're waiting until interest rates come down. These are our buyers that most of the time I call them move up or move down buyers, because there's somebody who already has a house. They're comfy in their house, but maybe they're empty nesters now and their kids have left and they don't need 4 bedrooms. They'd be completely fine with having 2 bedrooms, you know, so they want to move and downsize, but it's not a necessity, right? So they're sitting on the bench. And then you've got other buyers that are renting that are like, I'm not paying 6.5% interest not because I don't want to, but it's because I can't afford that 4-bedroom house at 6.5% interest rate because my monthly payment doesn't pan out. I can't get approved with my current debt without going into too many real estate jargon words, you know, where you got to maintain a certain debt limit in order to qualify for a house. Just because you make a bunch of money a month doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to qualify for that payment, right?
Yeah. And another thing that we were seeing during COVID with the super low interest rates was a lot of people kind of settling in the home that they bought just because they had submitted multiple offers on different houses that weren't getting accepted. And they had to make a move because maybe they were getting relocated or they had just sold a home and they had to move quickly. So when it came to actually deciding on the home, they settled. And after a year or two of living in that home, they really realized, man, I wish we wouldn't have done that. And I think that what we're going to see is also those folks, as time goes on, really start moving away from those homes and try to find the home that they actually really want.
Yeah, they had to buy the home that they needed then at that point instead of buying their dream home.
Exactly.
That's a great point.
And with that, also, right now, demand is where it is with the higher interest rates. However, when the interest rates do go down, how much is that going to raise demand and how much is that actually going to raise the price of actually getting the home that you want? Are you going to wait for the rates to go down? Or are you going to try to do something right now when it's not as crazy as I believe it will be? I could be wrong, but based off the data, I don't think I am.
That's what I'm hearing the experts say too. You know, if we get down to a rate of an average, what would you call it? Like an average rate for the conventional loan?
Even 5%, I think, is going to make a huge.
I was going to say 5.5.
I would say 5.5, 5.
If we get to 5, we're going to have a feeding frenzy. The buyers are going to be out there. They're going to be eating those homes up. And you're saying, prices are going to go back up. We're going to kind of see that spike we saw in 2021 when the buyers, after COVID or after everybody was unlocked or unleashed or whatever you want to call it, like, you know.
Once the uncertainty had passed, that's when everybody felt more comfortable.
Yeah. So I think we'll see not to that level of surge. I don't think we'll ever see that again just because that was such a perfect storm, but we will see a surge, in my opinion, by the end of this year. And that is going to drive up prices. So another thing that a lot of people don't think about that I talk to my clients about, I'm sure you do yours as well, is, you know, why don't you lock in there? How do I say this? Like, you can lock in a price and you can lock in your principal, how much you have on that house, how much you owe on that house, and you can lock in an interest rate, but eventually you can't refinance the price of a house.
No.
you can refinance an interest rate though.
You can never change the entry point for what you bought a house for.
Yep.
You can adjust a payment down the road. You can refinance a payment. I'm not going to beat a dead horse with that saying that we've all heard a million one times, which is the marry the house, date the rate. I mean, I just can't even, I can't handle it anymore. I cannot handle it anymore.
I couldn't even share that one.
It's just going into, hey, this house is $600,000 today.
Mm-hmm.
The interest rate is, say, 6.125, and you can secure that house at 600. Well, rates go down to 5.5. That house value, to the cost to get it, what, at least 6.25?
Yeah,
at least, at the very least, in my opinion. But yeah, I know that you've been doing a great job with, like, honestly, just you educated me even yesterday on different things on the phone about what's going on in the market. And I believe there's no one better to go into what you've been seeing in the market stats than you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, to summarize that, what we're trying to say and we're trying to communicate is that right now you can buy a house with little competition. I'm not going to say you're not going to have any competition, because I've got buyers right now that have competition, but it's a lot. Your odds of getting a house are a lot better if there's 2 to 3 offers on the table when you come in, rather than 10 to 15 offers on the table like we saw a year and a half ago, which was absolutely insane.
It was crazy.
A year and a half to 2 years ago is when we saw that, which was insane. So your odds of getting a house today are better. And then, like we're talking about, you can always refinance that rate to drop your payment later if interest rates do come down, which the experts are predicting that. However, no one has a crystal ball. No one knows what's going to happen in the world tomorrow. There's all kinds of things that could happen that affect interest rates in the short term that we don't know or we can't see in a crystal ball, right? So, but just to say, yeah, in summary, lock your price in now, buy a house now if you have the means, if you have the ability, and then refinance when there's a lower interest rate. If that's in a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, no one knows. But when it gets lower, you can always do that, because you can't change the price at which you buy the house for. And if you wait 6 months to 12 months, that same house might be 50 grand more.
Exactly. And then was that couple $100 a month and a little bit higher interest rate worth that much money in equity?
Yeah. So what else news-wise are we seeing? So, I mean, Fed's been, they've raised, the last time they raised rates was a 1/4 point, right? Which obviously that kind of had an inverse effect on mortgage rates, which was cool to see. Mortgage rates actually came down after Jerome Powell and the Fed announced that.
Yeah. And a lot of what is impacting interest rates is not necessarily them raising it, which it does have an impact, but it's also what he's saying. Right. Yeah. What Jerome's saying. He said recently, hey, they could see themselves raising it another 1/4 of a point between now and the end of the year, versus their tone before, which was, we're going to raise it until we get to our 2% number, like, which was, there was no end in sight. And that's brutal. Man. But what we've been seeing is, even today, I looked at the market today, and today is the lowest point that the 10-year treasury has been at in the last 6 months. So as the 10-year treasury goes down, typically mortgage-backed securities that interest rates follow go up, which means rates go down. So you see a stock go up, it's good. You see mortgage-backed securities go up, it's good. So we're seeing that already impacting interest rates. Interest rates in the last month and a half have gone down at least 0.5%. I mean, just since everything's happened. And, I know that there's a lot of fear out there. But the other thing is, what we're seeing with foreclosures as a whole, they're at one of the lowest points in history, period. End of story. Yep. It's not 2008, 2007 all over again. Yeah. Absolutely not.
Let's bring San back in here. Hey, San, got any real estate market questions before I dive into the stats?
Well, I tell you this much, man, just looking in, and also, I'm not a big fan of the news. Unfortunately, there's some things that you have to watch in order for you to go ahead and be up to date with what's going on. So all of your education, information right now is actually really educating. But I do have a question. We are obviously in some different times, and we're looking at different things all over the board. I mean, not even just in America, but all over the world. So when you guys start talking about the current state of the economy, what are we thinking about when it comes down to the actual dollar? Knowing that the dollar is actually, it's the world power of currency. what happens if some things like that change? What do you suggest as two powerhouses in the real estate industry? What do you guys suggest as for any of our viewers watching? It's a big question.
Well, yeah.
Well, what I can speak to, and this is, if you look at any point on a calendar and you look out 10 years previously or 10 years ahead when it comes to buying real estate, there is no point in which, if you looked at a calendar 10 years ahead, where somebody couldn't have sold the home and made a profit. There is no point in history where they couldn't have done that. You can't say that for the stock market. You can't say that for a lot of different things. But another thing is when it comes to investments, right? There's a lot of different things that impact the stock market. There's a lot of different factors that impact that. Well, just because we saw a lot of appreciation when it comes to real estate does not mean that the home values have to go down by any means. If you looked at the last 70 years, over 60 of them has seen appreciation and consistently. It doesn't, it's a very, in my opinion, it is one of the most secure investments you can make. Obviously, as inflation goes up, what does that do? That lessens the strength of the dollar.
Yeah.
So what they're doing right now with trying to impact inflation and drive it down strengthens what a dollar is, right? If we even looked at minimum wage, 6 years ago, minimum wage was $7. Since then, it's gone up over almost doubled in the amount. I think it's $13.85 in the state of Arizona right now.
I don't know what it is, but it's over $10 an hour.
Yeah.
So I know it's getting up there, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, well, another thing too is the strength of the dollar doesn't change what your mortgage payment is. And if you have a job and a career that's not commission based, it typically doesn't change how much you're going to make per month either. So having the strength of the dollar go up or down isn't going to increase foreclosures. It's not going to put more inventory on the market. It's not going to do the things that we see have a direct reflection on the real estate market.
And something that Jerome Powell kind of has said a lot is he wants people to get pay increases, but he wants them to get pay increases in a fashion that supports his goal of 2% inflation, which means, hey, he wants people to get pay increases, but not more than what's going to support that, which we were seeing a lot of folks, especially
5 cents a year.
Yeah.
5 cents a year.
Oh, it's just because people need to make more money to keep up with inflation. And by the time they realize that, how much inflation was, it's just too late. So it's just that scale where you're putting your jelly beans on it and what's the right thing to do.
Yeah. So thanks for the question, Sam.
Yeah, that was great, Sam.
Appreciate it, man.
No worries. I think that, education is key, and people that are investing right now or not investing right now or whatever they may be doing, they definitely need to know where to put their money, because guess what? You got to be smart with Travis Smart.
More than a name, it's a way of life. Yes, sir.
See, that's what it's all about. Well, let's see what else you got going on, my friend. I'm down to keep on listening. Let's go.
Cool. Yeah, let's dive in. Let's dive. I was trying to say dive into some local stats, right? Because we're here in Prescott. We're in the Quad Cities. Let's look at what's going on in the Quad Cities. So I've pulled up a market summary here. This is looking at the data through the local MLS. So I'm not looking at Phoenix. I'm not looking at the rest of Arizona. I'm just looking at the Quad Cities. A couple of things that we like to look at is, first of all, is active listings. So as you can see on the graph here, if you follow my cursor, it's this blue line. And this is showing me that we're actually getting less and less listings on the market. And that's been since September of last year, right? So year over year, we do have a significant increase in the number of listings. But right now, as of the end of March, there was 892 residential homes on the market in the Quad Cities area, which is down. That's down for us. So obviously you can see in the graph. To show you how that relates to sales, there was 288 residential homes that sold in March, right? So there's a lot more on the market than there is that actually sold, which is good. That's what we want to see. We actually, for a healthy market, we want to see somewhere between 4 to 6 times the number of sales for houses that are on the market to choose from, right? So that's basically saying every buyer that bought a house in March, it would have been ideal if they would have had somewhere between 6 and 8 homes to choose from that they weren't competing with somebody else on. But that's not the reality. As we talked about earlier, there's a little competition going in the market, and that goes back to your traditional supply and demand. I'm not going to bore you with an economics lesson here, right? Even though I definitely could. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to the to the numbers, but I'll keep it relative for you. But just think of it this way, supply and demand, the way it works, if you're not familiar, is the more houses that are on the market, that means that there's more supply of homes. That means that buyers have more to choose from if you're buying. And that means that you can come in with a better offer on a house because there's less demand for that supply. Now, the opposite of that is if there's not enough homes on the market, then you've got multiple buyers that are putting offers in on the same home, like we talked about the client that I'm working with right now. And then that means you're not going to get as good of a deal. You don't have as much negotiating power as a buyer when it's that market. So based on these numbers and the rate of supply versus demand, these numbers are telling me that we are still technically, by a number standpoint, by a stat standpoint, we are still in a seller's market in this economy, even though rates are high. And that's because the supply hasn't shot up like we expected it to.
And a lot of like what you were talking to me about yesterday, it was, the number of listings may be a little bit higher than it was a year ago today, but it's not because there's more listings coming onto the market. It's because of the days on market. So say you're waiting for that perfect home, you're not going to see that house come on.
Travis hit the nail on the head with that. So let's dive on to days on market, right? So this is the graph here. It says days on market. As of the end of March, let's see, I'm trying to get it to give it to me. It's not popping up, but it was just over 70 days on market. And you can see on the graph, this is the highest we've been in the last year. A year ago, we were below 30 days for a house to be on. When we say on market, what that means is from when it goes into the MLS, it's got the sign in the yard, to when there's a contract in escrow, right? So that's the time that it's available for a buyer to write an offer on it and to buy it. So even though days on market is pretty high, that's sky high right now. Our inventory really is not reflecting that.
And the other thing as well is obviously take into account the weather that we've had this year as well.
That's true.
A lot of snow. We've had a little bit more snow than we normally have. I would say a lot more snow than we've normally had. It's not necessarily that it's a lot more volume. It's just more consistent, more occurrences of it. But and the other side of that is how many people have been waiting for things to warm up, which we saw this last weekend. It was gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous.
So the next stat I want to dive into before we fall asleep, I swear I'll be done with the stats soon, but super important to talk about this, and that's sold median price, right? The actual sales price of the homes that are closing escrow, not what sellers are wishing they would get for their homes, but the ones that buyers are actually buying. We had a significant jump in March from February. So in March, the number was at 477,000. And this is for the Quad Cities area all combined, right? This is what we're looking at, is the Quad Cities area. So if you have questions on specifically Prescott Valley, Dewey, Humboldt, Chino, Paulden, get a hold of me. I'll be happy to hop on a Zoom call or a phone call or email you, any stats that you're looking for specifically. But right now we're just going to cover the Quad Cities area as a whole. 477,000 for the median sales price in March, and that is up from 447,000 in February.
Wow.
Any thoughts on that? Why we would see a price jump that significant in 1 month?
Well, I think it honestly comes down to people who are possibly waiting to list their home until it did warm up. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like, it's kind of, I kind of look at it that way. We did see rates go down. So, in the month of March versus February, which was, we don't want to talk about February very much when it comes to interest rates, but it was, not good. February was not great for interest rates, but people gained a lot more buying power throughout March. And I think, that wait till it warms up.
Yeah.
You wait till it warms up and see what happens with this.
Another thing that you got to take into consideration when we're talking about prices is that when we're looking at this data, we call these lagging indicators because the average escrow period right now is 30 days. Sometimes escrows are 45 days if there's a different loan type or something else involved in it, or maybe just seller or buyer preference. So these prices that we were seeing in March that were closing was a direct result of homes that were going under contract in January and February.
Yeah, I mean,
so
that's amazing. And also median isn't impacted by those like really high outliers like you were explaining to me yesterday.
Yeah. So we like to look at median sales price instead of an average sales price. The reason being is because you've got houses out there. This takes all residential real estate into account. So you've got the fixer-upper homes that are down at the bottom that are sold for 40%, 50% of actual home value. Those are going to be at the bottom of the list. And then you have those outliers. Maybe a millionaire came in and was like, oh, and buy this house, for $2.5 million, and we see it. But so when we look at a median, we're looking at the price that's in the center rather than the outliers up here on the top for the $1 million plus listings, and then the wholesale listings that are down here in the bottom. So doing this gives us a bit better of an idea rather than taking the average and then having the average be skewed by those outliers.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
No, that makes complete sense. So it's
a lot of information. That's for sure.
So, yes, sir. That's what we're here for. So that wraps up, the stats. Like I said, I don't want to bore y'all too much, but if you do have any questions at all on the stats, please get a hold of me, reach out to me. Sam will put my number up on the screen. There it is. There's my number. You can call or text me on that line, and we'll set up a time. I've got an office in downtown Prescott. We can meet there, go over stats. I can do a Zoom call. We can do a phone call. We can do a FaceTime. You can send me a carrier pigeon, whatever's good for you.
You know how to run those things.
So,
okay. So Travis, how do we get a hold of you, my friend?
You can get a hold of us. You can DM us. You can call us, text us. A couple great numbers for us is 928-220-7673. My direct cell phone number, 928-848-1664. Be happy to answer any questions anybody has, help you out, give you any sort of insight that I have. And Brent's very, very knowledgeable as well. And obviously, we could have probably talked about this for hours, to be honest.
Yeah.
And San Martin, really appreciate you giving us the platform to speak about this. You are awesome. You're everywhere. It always amazes me whenever I see that you're somewhere on social media. I'm like, how is he two places at once right now? This is absolutely amazing.
It's called really technology. Technology is working for our benefits right now.
So, also, you can get a hold of both of us on Facebook or Instagram. So we're both on there.
Yep.
So with that being said, guys, hey, Brent, are you going to be doing this every week, or you just found Travis for one day event? How's this going to work out? I want you back,
this is actually, this is going to be episode 1 or starting a series that we're going to do. It'll be monthly. So keep a lookout for this. The first Tuesday of every month, we're going to come on here and I'll give you a market update on what's going on.
All right, my friend. Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming through and giving everybody a smart tip with Mr. Travis Smart.
Thank you,
I appreciate you, my friend. And I'm going to put up a little screen share to show you and your amazing team.
Oh, that's cool.
There they are. If you guys want to know more about what they got going on, this is all for you. So with that being said, we're out of here.
All right. Catch y'all next time.
We're out of here. See you
guys later.